Well, good morning, everyone. I'll call this meeting of Heritage Oakville to order. We are here in the council chamber, and we are at the same time being live streamed. For anyone who's watching us from home who doesn't have a copy of the agenda, they should go to oakville.ca, and under the heading, under the tab, council, town meetings and so on, they'll be able to find the agenda there, and they can follow along what we're doing. Delegations are encouraged to register with the clerk by noon on the previous business day, the day prior to the meeting. And if you were planning to delegate online, you would have had to have done that. And there's a simple way to do it. There is an online form that you can use. People who are in attendance in the council chamber can in fact delegate at any time when requested. But it is hoped that they would let the clerk know that that is their intention. We have 2 discussion items and 2 information items on the agenda today, and we have a delegate also in attendance. I'll remind everybody that we are an advisory committee and that any decisions that we make today in the form of recommendations to council will go to the Planning and Development Council meeting at its meeting on the 25th of November at 6:30 p.m. So do we have any regrets, Madam Secretary?
We do. Susan Hobson and Jason Judson are not in attendance.
Okay, thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest with respect to any items on the agenda today? No? Good, thank you. The next order of business is confirmation of the minutes of our last meeting. These have been circulated. Any comments on those minutes? Would somebody like to give me a motion? Bob, thank you very much. Bob has moved that the minutes be adopted as circulated. Any further discussion on that? Anyone opposed to that motion? The motion is carried. Okay, our first discussion item today is a heritage permit application with respect to 81 Allen Street, and that is Sue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll get the presentation loaded up here. And I will happily take everyone through the heritage permit application that we have received for the property at 81 Allen Street. Okay, so the property is located on the east side of Allen Street, really just at the intersection, or dead end rather, of Robinson Street. It is designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act as part of the 1st and 2nd Street Heritage Conservation District. Of course, it is also very close to the neighboring Old Oakville Heritage Conservation District and several Part 4 designated properties as well. The application before us today is to demolish the existing residence, the 1-story with attached garage, and to construct a new 2-story residence. The existing property that you saw on that title screen is a non-historic, non-contributing property, and there are no variances required for the proposed new residence that we're seeing today as well. So, starting, of course, with the demolition, because we always have to deal with what's on site first. The structure here was built around 1953. The inventory created for the 1st and 2nd Street Heritage Conservation District has identified it as a non-heritage, therefore non-contributing property, which means that demolition of these types of properties is permitted. However, they are required to have the approval of new plans for the residents, and before the demolition can actually occur, they must have also applied for their building permit. And that is to avoid empty gaps sitting in the streetscape if plans go awry. So the big thing really here to take you through, obviously, is the proposed new residence that would replace the 1953 structure. So what we're looking at is a 2-story buff brick with vertical wood siding residence. You'll note that there are several mature town trees at the property frontage. Those are on town property, even though they're within the retaining wall in the side, just above the sidewalk. And so they will be subject to the town's tree conservation standards so that they are safeguarded during the construction process. And the owner is very much in support of maintaining these trees. The driveway access will be on the same corner, using the same driveway curb cuts as the existing property as well. And so this is just a little bit of information that was not included in the heritage permit application package. It's just confirmation that there are no variances required for this permit application. So the red box is showing what's existing, that is what is going to be demolished. But we also have, of course, a column for what the bylaw standards currently are and what the proposed site statistics will be for the new residents. So the total lot coverage permitted under the zoning bylaw is 25%, and that is what the proposed residence is. It is 25%. The building height for the garage is permitted to be 10 meters. At the peak of this roof, it's 9.7 meters. And then we have setbacks. The house is located relatively in the same position as the current house is, although it is sited slightly forward from the existing property, but still is well within all of the parameters established for setbacks under the zoning bylaw. So I'm going to take you through the drawings as proposed. On this drawing, it is a little hard to see, but there is a red line that shows the footprint there of the existing house, but really what we're concerned about is looking at the footprint of the new proposed residence on the lot there. And so this is the front elevation. This is what will face onto Allen Street. You can see here that the overall design for the residence is, I would say, contemporary in nature, but with more traditional details. And that doesn't mean that they've gone overboard with any type of fake heritage. They are trying to provide a blending, I guess, of contemporary and traditional to, one, let it be known that this is a new house within the streetscape, but also it's one that attempts to be compatible and sympathetic to its neighbors. So the principal cladding material that you see from the front elevation is a buff clad brick with, of course, the vertical wood siding to the kind of the north corner of the property. And I would note that while this home presents as a single-family residence, it is actually being constructed so that it will have two separate units inside. The units are actually divided horizontally so that the first floor and the basement are one unit, and the second floor is a second unit. The design itself, though, is quite intentional to look as a single-family home in case in the future anybody would prefer that it be a single-family home. It could be converted without significant changes to the exterior of the property. So just coming around the side of the property, obviously, you can see here there are some differing roof lines that are meeting up so that you can actually see these are the side pitches of the gable fronts, the gables that front onto Allen Street. And again, the mix of buff brick and vertical cladding. Coming around to the rear of the property, you see somewhat similar details with the front-facing wall gables that project slightly from the flat plane of the elevation. And of course, as is common, there is slightly more glazing on the back of the property in order for the occupants to take advantage of their outdoor amenity spaces. And this is coming around to, again, the other side of the property where we can see how those roof lines meet up. And this is actually, the entrance that you see here is a separate entrance to that second story unit. And so as the house is designed to look as though it is a single-family residence, this entranceway is designed intentionally to have that kind of side door aspect to it, but it is the entrance into a stairway that will take you up to the second unit on the second story of the house. The applicants have been working with town staff over the past few months. We had a pre-consultation with several committee members about a month or so ago, in addition to several discussions directly with heritage planning staff. And I would note that there have been a number of changes made to the design that has been presented here from what was originally being considered for the site, as the applicants took into consideration some of the feedback that was offered at those pre-consultation sessions. What you see here, I think, on this slide is one of the most important images, because it does show how the proposed new residence fits into the streetscape of this side of Allen Street in the 1st and 2nd Street Heritage Conservation District. So you can see just to the north, there is a property that recently came in for some fairly significant renovations to the existing heritage house, which I think were done quite well with the construction of that addition to the north with the garage. And it is a fairly substantially massed house, which I think provides a little bit of balance to the house that's being proposed that we're looking at today at 81 Allen Street. So the massing is not particularly out of character for the area. The height is similar to neighboring properties, and as I noted, it is lower than what the zoning bylaw permits. And generally speaking, it does present as a single-family residence in this line of single-family homes. Here's the rendering that you saw very briefly at the beginning of the presentation. One of the reasons why we wanted to make sure that you were seeing a rendering in addition to those elevation drawings is to kind of pull your attention to the fact that it's not just a flat plane at the front of the house. There are some visual keys, the slight protrusion of the vertical siding coming forward, the slight recession of the entrance, to help break up what is essentially a substantially large structure, and to provide more visual elements to stimulate the eye, so that you can see this building in more pedestrian scaled terms rather than as a large block. So we have, of course, included the assessment for the proposed residence. Appendix C holds the guidelines for new development from the 1st and 2nd Street Heritage Conservation District Plan. Heritage planning staff generally feel that the scale and massing is appropriate for the streetscape, but we do note it is going to be a significant change from what is existing. The height is within the permitted zoning and slightly lower. The style of the residence is contemporary with these traditional elements, which is something I think that is generally encouraged in the 1st and 2nd Street District Plan, to make sure that development is clearly of its time while still attempting to be compatible or sympathetic with traditional styles that may exist around it. The buff brick and the natural colors of the wood siding generally are intended to kind of blend this house into its natural surroundings. The materials we find are generally appropriate as well, in accordance with the guidelines. And the main entrance does face the street as is required. And as I noted, even though there is a second entrance for the second unit, it is located as a side entrance to ensure that this main entrance keeps our focal point facing on Allen Street. The applicants have also, as I noted, committed to the conservation of those mature town trees that are located at the very front of the property, although there will be some smaller trees that will have to be removed that are very close to the existing foundations of the existing residence. And so the staff recommendation before you today is to approve the application as presented, with, of course, these final details coming into staff for approval so that we can make sure that the product specifications match the requirements of our guidelines, and that the heritage permit expire 2 years from the date of final approval. So I do know that the architect for the project is also with us today, and she may be called on to help me answer any questions you might have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Super. Thank you very much, Susan. Are there any questions of Susan? Councillor McNeice, you would raise your yellow hand if you want to participate. Okay. Yep. Bob?
I'd just like to ask a question about tree 9 on the site plan. That looks like a fairly large canopy tree that has a big X on. Is that totally necessary to take that one out?
Sorry, I'm crossing between the site plan and then the existing site photographs as well. Yeah, I know, the site plan is page 17, and then there are photos of the existing site on pages 25 through to 28, and I'm just having a hard time identifying which exact tree that is. And I may actually require the architect to help me answer this question, if that's okay, Mr. Chair?
We could have that answered when the applicant makes her presentation. Would that be all right, Bob?
Okay.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Good, okay. Any other questions of staff? George?
Ron, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Susan. I'm looking at the Appendix C, and which is really only a minor part of all the details for the study of the district. And the thing that jumps out at me, as it has in a number of the other developments in Districts 1, and at least in that district, 1st and 2nd Streets, is the provisions under location, scale, and massing. 43323, new development shall protect and maintain the heritage character of the district by displaying a clear simplicity of massing, proportions, and roof forms, which I fail to see here. Simplicity of roof forms. It's similar to some of the other developments we've seen over in 1st and 2nd Street. Under height, the provision is to protect and maintain the historic low-rise scale of the district. I don't see that this protects the low-rise scale. These are just questions I'm coming to because of the exhibit. And under style, the architectural style of the development shall be compatible with heritage character of the district. I fail to see that. Maybe someone can explain it to me, but I fail to see that. And the massing, I think, was indicated on your slide is not particularly out of character, but really this development, this house proposal, seems to me would be nice over in Watson and somewhere else north of Lakeshore, but I don't think it's compatible in any way with the district, and those are the questions I was asking, how that seems to fit into this program this morning.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So, I mean, I certainly would agree with you, George, that the roof lines are somewhat complicated, especially as you look at the roof plan from above. However, that's not generally a view that most of us will have access to, nor actually are the side elevations. I actually think that the two front gable roofs that you see on the front elevation are necessary to try to actually break up what I think could have been an oversimplification of the form of the building, which is essentially a large square. It is quite blockish, and I think that the change in roof lines here are necessary to actually provide that with enough character so that it doesn't look essentially like a very contemporary modern block. In regards to the height, I certainly see the portion that you read, but immediately underneath it, it does say that the maximum height for new development shall be the maximum height permitted for the district under the town zoning bylaw. As I've noted, it's actually underneath what's permitted there. And so I think what I would note is that staff have noted that there are some challenges with the existing zoning bylaw in terms of how those regulations impact the design of the new residences that we have been seeing for this area. And I would note that update to the zoning bylaw is in progress, but we are currently dealing with the regulations as they are now. And so in regards to height, the proposal is certainly meeting those requirements. And in regards to style, it also does say non-traditional styles may be permitted, providing their application respects the scale, massing, setbacks, and materials of heritage buildings. And I do believe that the applicant has made, significant attempts to do this, although I also recognize that there is a matter of taste involved here as well. Some people simply don't necessarily appreciate contemporary designs, and I would say that this has been an attempt to try to keep a balance between contemporary and traditional. So that's where staff feel that the proposal meets the guidelines. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. George, all right?
Thank you.
And I think you're reflecting back to that street, because that whole Allen Street, the second district part, this I think is about the last house that can in fact be developed, because everything else has been rebuilt or redeveloped or in some way. So the character of the street now is a lot different from what it was 10 years ago. It is what it is now. Okay, any other questions of Sue? Oh, Councillor McNeice, no yellow hand, good, okay. Right, now the applicant, I believe, is here with us, or a representative of the applicant. So if you could attend the podium and give your name, rank and serial number for the benefit of the secretary so she can clock you in, and then let us know what you want us to know.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Alison Strickland from Narrative Design on behalf of the homeowner. Thank you to Sue for making our presentation for us so eloquently. And I think she's covered everything that I would have wanted to say. So I'm really here just to respond to any questions that anybody has for me, thinking specifically of Mr. Laughlin's tree question and anything else that you may want to pose to me right now. So I will begin with that tree number 9 on the floor plan, which is towards the back of the house on the south side. Currently, this tree is designated to be removed and, in fact, has been approved by forestry already to be taken down. It may be a risky save. You know, it is, the root structure is going to be impacted by that corner of the house. It could be one of those things that we could try and save in the short term. In the long term, the driveway is extending towards the back of the house, so it's going to be an obstacle for some vehicles in the future anyway.
Anything more you wanted to add, Alison?
Any further questions?
Okay, are there any questions on Alison? Jerry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Thank you, Alison. I have a couple of questions, some comments. A question regarding car parking.
Yeah.
I noticed there's a garage proposed at this submission. Is there a thought of the garage? And our concern would be, how does it affect the massing on the site?
Yeah, in any garage in the future would be towards the back of the property. You wouldn't see it from the street. It would be against the far corner on the south side. So there's room for 2 cars at the front of the house right now, but any future garage plans wouldn't be attached to the house or anything like that. They would be detached towards the rear of the property.
And another, more than a question, I think it's a curiosity.
Yeah.
The house is split horizontally but reads vertically. I'm curious as to your decision to make it read.
Yeah. This was driven by the client himself.
Okay.
He has a shrinking and expanding family, extended family, and he does plan to live there himself, but he knows that there will be future family members who may want to take over this property in due course, and he's created provision for them to be able to do so internally without impacting the exterior very much at all. So actually, just to address at one point, I'm not sure if anybody spotted that where the front entrance is, immediately to the left of that is the secondary entrance. So That side entrance that you see with the, let's call it the exits there, is actually, think of it more of an exit than an entrance. It's not the primary entrance.
Oh, thank you for clarifying. That was going to be my second question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Alison.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of the designer? Okay, no. Thank you very much, Alison.
Okay.
Okay, as no one else wishes to delegate? Good, okay. Confined to the board. Any discussion? Jerry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This site is exceptional. It's a very rare and special site in that the building will be a terminating vista that stands at the east end of Robinson Street. So when one is looking up the street, the view ends with this site. Really a very rare architectural opportunity for a grounding architectural statement. And in this case, it almost benefits from the larger massing and the statement that it makes. And I think the fact that there is a two-gable vertical element on the facade does lead the eye up the street from Robinson and grounds it nicely. You know, quite frankly, I think even more can be done. I mean, it's not every day that there is this opportunity. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Jenny. Any other comments? Any other discussion? Okay. Would somebody like to give me a motion? Councillor Gittings, that's a motion to approve the staff recommendation, I take it. Okay. Yes, thank you. Okay, the motion has been made. Any discussion on the motion? Anyone opposed to the motion? Being only one, the motion is carried. So this will go forward as a recommendation to council at the next meeting of the Planning and Development Committee. So the next item on the agenda is a notion of intention to designate multiple properties, and that's probably Carolyn. Yes, it is.
There we go. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have 5 designations as part of the Heritage Designation Project. So I'll go through them briefly. The first 3, they're 3 separate properties, but it is essentially the same structure, and that is the stone wall from the Glendon House on the east side of Brawny Road, which is north of the older village of Brawny. So the property has been evaluated and is found to have cultural heritage value as a rare remaining example of an early 20th century fieldstone wall in Oakville. I'll just go back to this previous image. The top right corner shows the wall just in front of the middle property at 231 Brawny Road. But as any of you who are familiar with that street, you can see the wall extends onto 3 properties, but was originally part of the Glendon House property, which was larger. So the property is historically associated with Brawny's late 19th and early 20th century residential and summer home development history, including the Glendon House. And just as a side note, we are also evaluating the Glendon House, but currently we're just bringing forward the wall at the time. So finally, we found it to have contextual value. It's physically, functionally, visually, and historically linked to its surroundings. Again, an early 20th century residential neighborhood, which has often for many years been characterized by these smaller to mid-sized homes, which are built for Brawny's village's middle class, but also as part of the growing cottage industry that was there during those years. So that's our first one. Our second one is the Dame McKendrick House at 1314 Lakeshore Road East. If any of you are familiar with this one, it's a site that you've probably mostly seen just by driving along Lakeshore Road, but also going into Garlock Gardens. This is associated with the McKendrick family of Garlock Gardens and is still quite visible along that entrance as you enter into Garlock Gardens. It has cultural heritage value as a representative example of a Tudor revival style built during the arts and crafts era, as the original house known as Chestnut Point was on Garlock Gardens. Historically associated with the McKendrick family, in this case specifically Dane McKendrick, who had built the house. Hugh McKendrick had given these lots to his children to build homes, and this one was built for Dane. It's also associated with William Gould Armstrong, who is a well-known architect who owned the property and made changes to it as well. And finally, contextually, it's important in supporting and maintaining the character of Gerlach Gardens, which is a designated cultural heritage landscape, and is physically, functionally, visually, and historically linked to its surroundings. Again, the importance of this area along Lakeshore Road East, which was home to a lot of these summer estates like Gerlach Gardens. And finally, the third one we have here, the Chapman House at 2167 Rebecca Street. You can see that the top right image is a view of the house, and the bottom right image is an older aerial photograph showing when it was part of a rural area, which was really populated mostly by farms and orchards. As you can see in that image, you can see a lot of little dots on that aerial view showing all the fruit orchards that were quite common in this neighborhood. So this one is a representative example of an Edwardian classicism brick farmhouse. It's historically associated with the theme of agriculture and fruit farming in Oakville, of which it was a part. And finally, contextually, it's physically, visually, and historically linked to its surroundings and contributes to the understanding of the local communities of Bronte and Oakville and the long history of fruit farming in this area. So the staff recommendation is that a notice of intention to designate be issued for these 5 properties. Again, that first one is one element, but because the stone wall is on 3 properties, we are putting through 3 separate notices for the 3 separate properties. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good, thank you, Carolyn. Any questions? Carrie?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Carolyn, I was interested on the first application with the stone wall. There appears to be a very interesting gray house in the background. 2 things, I guess. A, is that the Glendon House, and is it not worthy of designation?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. So that is the Glendon House, and we have been working with the owners on that one. There is some history there. We are still evaluating it in terms of its architectural value as well. So because we decided to do this separately as just dealing with the walls at this point, so we may be back in the future, but we're still looking into the house itself. We do have a bit of the history of it, but we're continuing to work with the owners because there is, architecturally, we're still evaluating that one.
Okay, good. Is that right? Yeah.
My usual question, Carolyn, are all the properties, all the designations being supported by the owners?
So we have 2 out of 3 for the Bronte Roads who have given us, told us they had no concerns. The other we hadn't heard back from. And there was some concerns from the Lakeshore property. We're still hoping to work with them. That's the McKendrick house. And we haven't heard any concerns from the Chapman house.
Good. Any other questions of Carolyn? George?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not a question so much as the notes on page 48 near the bottom where they talk about the number of lake stone walls. This is the same topic that we just talked about. It said it remains one of the only, if not the only fieldstone wall in Oakville remaining. But also on the list of listed properties in the brochure that's produced a number of years ago, there's another lake stone wall on southeast Oakville on Lakeshore, which we've all probably driven by for 40 years. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, that's on the list, is that one that's being investigated at this time?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to George. So we had identified this one as a bit different because it's a fieldstone wall. So we do acknowledge there are lake stone walls, which is a bit separate. This one's more unique in that it's a fieldstone wall, so they're a bit more unique in Oakville. There are certainly some lake stone walls that are, we're actually bringing forward another one, which is in the Brantwood neighborhood, which is currently on 4 properties. 2 of those properties have already been protected. We're looking at protecting the other 2 for the stone walls. That one will be forthcoming. There are several others in Oakville, in southeast Oakville. Some of them are also protected they're in the town's right of way. So those are ones we'll be looking at protecting through designation in the future, but not necessarily as part of this project, because even though their listed status will be removed by January 2027, because the town owns them, there's a little bit more flexibility for us. So you'll certainly be seeing more designations coming forward for other stone walls. But this one is unique in that it's a field stone wall, a little bit different.
Yeah, all right, thank you, thank you.
Okay, thank you, George. Any other questions of Carolyn? Yes, Councillor McNeese.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair. On the fieldstone walls, the Glendon House, I'm just wondering, agree with the previous comments that, the Glendon House looks pretty heritage worthy as well. So does designating just the wall help us or hinder us in any way if we wanted to pursue designating the house? Just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor McNeese, it doesn't really make a difference. We can come back and still protect the house through further designation. There's different ways you can do it. You can amend a bylaw or create another bylaw for protecting the house. So that's certainly something that can still be done in the future.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is it could have two bylaws, one protecting the fieldstone wall, one protecting the house, or in the future we can just amend it. I guess we'd have to do it before 2027, January 2027. Otherwise, the house would come off the list, right?
Typically, we would do it through an amendment and cover both of them in that one bylaw. But yes, before 2027, otherwise the house will probably still be there, but it would not have the protection of the listed status.
Okay, and that's sort of in the work plan for, say, next year to look into the house a bit more?
Yeah, it's still on our list. You'll see a few of upcoming Brawny properties that we're still looking at as well.
Okay, and for you, Chair, at the appropriate time, I'd be happy to put forward a motion to approve these designations.
Okay, thank you. In fact, if there are no other questions, I will take that as the motion. So you've heard the motion to approve. Any further discussion on that? Anyone opposed to that motion? Thank you. The motion carries. Right, so on to information items. First, 5.1, the Heritage Conservation District update, and that's Sue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's actually not a whole lot to report at the moment. Editing is ongoing. We are taking more time than we anticipated because we want to make sure that we really get this right. Given how long it has taken us to get to update the plan from the original passage in 1982, we are going through everything with a fine-tooth comb, and there's a bit more editing that we're working on, and working closely with the Oakville Lakeside Residents Association, who are fully involved in this process with me. So editing is ongoing. The public meeting that we were hoping to have this fall has been pushed back, but I certainly will let the committee know as soon as we have news and a new draft for review. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the next information item is the designation project update. That's Carolyn.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, we'll have more designations coming at the November Heritage Oakville meeting. Another piece we've been working on with our communications department is highlighting some of the properties that have been designated in the last year. So we have been out at several different properties taking video and photos and doing interviews with homeowners. So we're hoping to see, I'll let the committee know, but we'll have some posts on social media coming up, highlighting, again, little videos, and they'll be also on the town's YouTube channel. So just kind of celebrating some of these designations that have been done. And we're trying to also highlight some of the history of certain properties, but also some of the architecture and the different styles. So again, shedding light on that sort of background end of that process for the designations, but also trying to look at really the positive impacts that the designation project have had and some of the happy homeowners. So looking forward to that, and we can share some links and things with the committee when the time comes.
Good, thank you. That sounds excellent. Right, these are the information items. Would somebody like to give me a motion to receive them? Jerry, thank you. Jerry has made the motion to receive the information items. There's no further discussion on that. Anyone opposed to that motion? The motion is carried. Thank you. So the date and time of our next meeting is Tuesday, November the 26th, 2024 in the council chambers at 9:30. And that's it for today. Can I have a motion to adjourn? George, thank you. George has moved we adjourn. No one's opposed to that. So the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all, everybody, for the gift of your time today, and we'll see you in a month.